All right, traders, good afternoon. This is Christian from Hertz Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Monday, October 21st. And this should be a quick market recap because, price action was a little bit dull today. It was a little bit sleepy, but it felt like a little bit of a sleepy Monday today. There were what I refer to as some headwinds today that we encountered for the overall market. For instance, yields keep going higher. The TLT is now was up 1.8% today. And it's been a steady move in terms of what bond yields have been doing, higher and higher. The dollar has also been moving higher too. The VIX was up 2.2%. Sorry, that's not right. The VIX was up 1.9%, but sold off 2.2%. So the VIX actually moved towards the low of the day. So you kind of so this was, so I'm going to bring up two things. I'm going to talk about bonds for a minute because they do have a lot of implications, and it seems like they have more implications for some areas of the market. Other areas, it could actually be a positive. I'll explain because I know that could be a little bit counterintuitive a little bit, but so first of all, here's just the 30-year bond futures, right? So again, what we're talking about, I always try to make sure that everybody understands these points. And by the way, risk disclaimers in front of you. Everything that we're going through in these videos is for information purpose only, not giving out any full recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer right there. But we're not talking about what the Fed does on the short. The Fed controls the overnight rate. And what we're talking about is the long end of the curve. This is not what the Fed controls, right? This is controlled by supply and demand of the market. And yeah, so as this has been going down since basically a little bit before that last Fed meeting, bond yields have been going higher. Again, this is the 30-year bond, 30-year bond futures, and I'm going to talk about this two different charts here. So number one, this is the long-term trend, right? We know that bond yields have been going up now for a couple of years. They bounced here, right? And the bounce failed, and we're now heading back below the 200-day moving average. Now, the one thing that's potentially positive out of this, and if you've been watching my videos, you've known that I've talked about this virgin point of control. It's just been sitting here below the value area for the year, right? So again, this is the MarketWebs volume at price indicator. This gray box is what you see on the weekly chart, right? And that's the value area for the year. We've done some enhancements where you can now see the value area for the year, right? Because this is the value area for all of 2024, but you can now see that on the daily chart, which is that gray box, and you could see not only the value area for the year, but the value area, of course, for the month, which is meaning that we've been trending below all month of October. All right, now let's take a look at TLT. So similar concept, and I'm going to start the correct way this time, and I'm going to go to the weekly chart, but it's the same thing, right? Remember, yields move opposite as bond prices. So bond prices have been going down, since all the way back here, down, 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 down. But they've been going sideways, and we had a little bit of a bounce. Again, this is a different duration than the 30-year bonds, but this is also shows a similar picture, breaking back below the value area for the year, right? So yes, this did not work. It did not carry through the whole value area. So I know people on Twitter like to say aha, but yes, it stalled right at this other VPOC. So now we're down here, and this is a place of interest to see if this version point of control, where a lot of buyers and sellers have previously met up at, let's see if they can provide some demand here. So clearly we did not get it today, but there can be some overshoot that happens too. We had an overshoot here, and then we came back in. So just to be, full transparency, is that we could go a little bit further and then come back. So we'll see. But when you have a move like this, so what sometimes certain areas of the market just shakes this off. But sometimes it doesn't. And this is kind of interesting. It's why I haven't really wanted to be involved in the home builders group, even though like I put 2 home builders on the watch list because I'm like, hey, I'll let the price action dictate what I'm basically going to do. And and I was noting that this could be a possible breakout here, but that's a rejection there in the home builders, and that kind of makes sense. I mean, it's going to be tougher for consumers to buy houses with higher yields, right? Again, the confusing thing that I see all the time, and I think the folks on CNBC make this more confusing because I see a bunch of them go on CNBC and they're like, oh yeah, the Fed cutting rates should be great for buying houses. What? That that's the overnight rate. You don't get the overnight rate when you buy a house. It's more closely tied to like the 10-year, or you're buying a 30-year bond. You're not buying that's not, the rate is not based on what the Fed does. It's more or less based on what what we just went over. All right. So that makes it more difficult. And I every time one of these people, they bring out one of these people who talk about how the Fed cutting short-term interest rates is going to be good for home builders. I have no idea what these people are talking about. It doesn't make any sense. But I understand, like, interest rates are, if you're a regular equity person, right, and bonds may not be your thing, but I bring them up because there's a lot of implications, right? Biotech also doesn't like, equally weighted biotech does not like higher yield prices. It hasn't, and that's the same thing, ultimately for the small caps too. So it's not a coincidence like the small caps went down today because of higher interest rates and the dollar. And this was down 1.6% today. Again, it's not the end of the world. I mean, we're in an uptrend. This is in an uptrend, but it did not hold the breakout. That's what I was watching today. After you had this breakout, remember everybody talking about, oh my God, the small caps are breaking out, right? And I even thought when I did a video last week, I'm like, I don't know, it's going to be kind of tough for this to go. I said, I'm doubting it, but we'll see what happens with. Again, I try to be as objective as possible, but I do kind of take note of what the macro world is doing. But this makes more sense to me. I don't think that the small caps are going to fly if yields continue to go higher. But again, we'll see what happens if we get a bounce on those 2 Virgin point of control takes out being taken out, one on the 30-year and one on TLT. All right, so that's just a quick summary. Let's talk about SPY for a minute. There isn't really anything major to watch here on the daily chart. Remember, every week, right? So this is the value area for the month. We've been above since October 9th. The 1-hour chart is going to give you the value area for the week, right? And that becomes more important, especially like on a day like this. But for now, we held where we needed to. Intraday, it looked like, and I even showed this chart in the room, in the Tribeca Trade Group trading room, and I said, uh-oh, we might be breaking the value area for the week. But notice by the time these are each 1-hour bars, and 1 hour could be a long time sometime in trading. But we held here, and we're holding 581.76. So a little bit of a shakeout there. The tick index this morning got to like negative like 1200. So there was a sell program that hit, and that kind of coincides with this low point for the day. All right, so that's SPY, hanging in there. And a reminder too, as I bring up the Qs, there's over 100 names that are reporting earnings this week in the S&P 500, right? There's only 500 names, so there's actually more names. There's a few interesting names that are reporting in the Qs this week, but this is not a big week for the Qs. Like Tesla reports this week, a couple of the chip names I think report this week. But look at this actually closed back above the value area. So this was a rejection around like 10 o'clock this morning, going into the 11 o'clock. This bar closed at 11 o'clock, so it was rejection. But again, like, things did not go down for very long, and yeah, we're back above the value area. So again, this has been very choppy. Again, it's somewhat expected, I think, to get chop around this virgin point of control, right? How many times am I saying VPOC in this video? But again, like, they're really important. It's really important to know where underlying demand is and overhead supply, right? And this was overhead supply, and we're just kind of sitting here. probably waiting for some of those big names to report earnings. We had a couple interesting reports last week, like Taiwan Semiconductor and Netflix, but this wasn't powerful enough to get this out of this move. But I think if you continue to see rates doing what they're doing, we got to go back to the playbook of like what companies do okay when interest rates are higher. And it's been some of the the magnificent names, not so much because of growth per se, but because they've got a lot of cash and they refinanced their debt prior to interest rates going higher. So that's why they're a little bit shielded. Let's talk about this guy. Everybody's talking about NVDA, right? New highs today. Congratulations. I do own NVIDIA in my trading account. I own it in TTG trend portfolio too. That's a real nice move. I mentioned this at like right around 10 o'clock this morning, and I think I tweeted it out too. I said, hey, if we can stay above this value area, notice this nice move in the first hour. And when everything else was kind of selling off, NVIDIA was not. It was just kind of staying here, right, and hanging out. All right, so very nice. I actually like too I was looking at this ARM chart, right? Speaking of VPOC being taken out, this happened I think at the beginning of last week, and whoop, right into overhead supply. Now, after a few days, we're back into some support, which is 150.74. So I did go long some ARM at the end of the day. I'm just looking for maybe for a bounce out of here, right? Thinking that that support holds. If it doesn't hold, then I'll be out of the trade. And I basically my stop is right in here. Not the best place for a stop because the 20-day moving average is there. I think I set my stop to 147, was it? 149. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit tough because you do have some support in here, but perhaps we won't need it. All right. By the way, I did very little trading today. This was just managing positions. Even when I put out this weekend's watch list for members, I'm like, hey, I always put the watch list out for obviously looking for new positions. I recap, I do a weekend video for members where I go through all the charts of my open positions, but I don't put like the open position charts on the watch list because I'm already long those names. And I mentioned, I was like, I actually really like the positions that I'm holding are going to be, it's kind of where I want to be in terms of exposure. I don't need to be looking at a bunch of new charts. A couple of names that were standouts today. This was a name that I did put on the weekend watch list, right? This is Wolf. It actually was the best performer for the watch list. And look at this thing go. So again, there's still momentum, but there's still pockets of that momentum, and took out a couple of VPOCs and just kept on going. And I don't really see anything until I think $8 for the next. Now, again, it's going to have to get through this area, but in terms of major volume, I don't see anything higher until all the way up here. And I think you have to go back a bit to see where that VPOC is from. Right, it's all the way back in here. So nice base break, and this is kind of taking a little while. Like base break higher, kind of come back and retest. You've had to have a lot of patience with this name. Basing, break higher, sit back, a little bit of a higher move. So again, I would, if this happens to go straight up, that would be great. But there's a lot of backing and filling in this name, even though it's still much higher than where it was all the way back in 2023. So that was Wolf. App loving you. I mean, you have to be loving this move, right? I mean, sorry, that's horrible. But I mean, look at the move, and then Loop Capital just slapped on a strong buy on this name too. I've been long this name in the TTG trend portfolio. I actually took some of the position off. I think in somewhere in here. But I still have the name on in the TTG trend portfolio. This thing has been a monster since breaking out. Look at this VPOC, and like here's a good sign. Like this went right over overhead supply, no problem. Just jumped right over it. It's kind of what you want to see when you're faced with that, but very, very strong in this name. What else? There's a couple other names I think that I wanted to go over. Yes, for Bitcoin, a name that I got long on Friday, which was MSTR. Again, this thing held in pretty well today. Despite the volatility, it's you get nice little tests when the market's going down a bit, And if you're in some of these names that are showing some relative strength, you want to make sure that they're still showing relative strength. But here is the nice little check back here to the top of the value area. Not much of a move to the downside and still moving in the right direction. So it did not take out, we're getting close to last week's highs. But remember, this was where the support was. And it's building off of that. So ultimately, I would say not bad. The gold miners and gold kind of gave things back a little bit today. Saw a little bit of profit taking. Again, I think with a stronger dollar like we have right now, I think people are more inclined to take some profits. And by the way, you've seen this story play out over and over in gold, right? It rips higher, then kind of sees some profit taking and sells off a little bit, rips higher, then kind of sells off again. So, I think the trends look great in these things. You just have to be aware that there's going to be profit taking, as this thing kind of breaks above its 5 and 20-day moving averages like that. I'm going to keep it, I'm going to keep the video short for now, but, again, just kind of, I think today was more of a day for, watching existing positions. Obviously really like the move in NVDA and, yeah, just, bringing up your trailing stops, right? That's it for today's video. Have a great night, guys. See you tomorrow.